Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Great to be with you today. My name is Adam. So let me just tell you a little bit about me. I'm a psychologist, and what you see here is our website. This is my outpatient clinic called Oakwood Counseling here in Bryan, Texas. We're on Briarcrest. And I moved to College Station in 1996 when I started graduate school. And like most people that have lived in College Station for many, many years, never thought I was going to stick around. I don't know anybody that lives here, honestly, that says, yeah, I've always wanted to raise my children in College Station. But I came here in the 2000s, late 1990s, really, to start my PhD, and lived in New England for a couple of years for my clinical training, but have lived here ever since then, pretty much. And my wife, she works for Bryan ISD. We've got 4 kids. They're adults now. We're empty nesters. Hallelujah. We made it. And I've been here ever since then. So I'm a licensed psychologist to have an outpatient clinic. And I also do a lot of work with organizations. I supervise graduate students at the medical school at A&M and just do all kinds of different things. So today we're talking about what I call holistic self-care. And self-care really became a popular topic sort of midway through the pandemic. No one really talked about self-care before that. But then when the pandemic hit, everybody and their dog started talking about self-care, which I think is great on the one hand, because it's such an important topic and we need to be talking about it. But the thing that kind of bums me out as a psychologist is that I've been to self-care workshops, and if I can just be perfectly honest, they suck. They're just not good. And here's what I mean by that. I've been to these workshops and they're like, yeah, if you're stressed out, you just need to go home and have your little piece of chocolate and take a bubble bath. And my thought is this, like, if your stress is superficial, then that kind of superficial intervention, that's perfect. Take a bubble bath, eat some chocolate, and you're good to go. But when I think about what we've been through over the last 3 years, nothing, or I should say very, very little about the stress that we're experiencing is superficial. It's deep stress. It's personal stress. That's the stress that we're feeling. So that when we talk about managing that stress and staying in the game, we've just got to think more broadly and more deeply than taking a bubble bath. There's nothing wrong with taking a bubble bath. That's fine, but we need to think about it more comprehensively. It's in that context then that we're talking about this idea of holistic self-care, and we're going to jump right in. I want to do a little exercise with you. So again, I'm a licensed psychologist. I also have a doctorate of ministry in pastoral counseling. I'm an ordained clergy. So obviously fascinated with the study of human behavior, right? I want us to do a little activity to kind of center us and get us ready for the content. I want you to look at these pictures here. These are just random pictures of whatever. Tell me which picture captures your school year so far. For me, I'm going to say it's the plant coming up out of the concrete, man. I feel like I've been buried in concrete, and I'm just now beginning to see life in myself, life in the work that I'm doing, life in the people around me. We're certainly not out of the woods, and there's a lot of concrete, and I'm not sure how much it's going to crack open, but that's where I'm at. And let me just say this, no matter where you are today, if you're like, man, I'm good. These 3 years, I've leveled up. I feel strong. I'm ready to go. Life is sprouting. That's awesome. You get to be that. If you're saying, man, I'm depleted, I'm overwhelmed, you get to be there unapologetically. I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't feel. You should feel this. You shouldn't feel. No, we're not going to do that. You get to own your journey, whatever that looks like. You're entitled to it. Okay. So wherever you are, great. And my hope is that with this content that we're going to cover today, you're going to walk away with practical strategies that will just help you level up a little bit in your game, start getting back on top of things. Many of us have been locked down into survival mode the last 3 years. Again, the whole point here is just to help us start pulling out of survival mode, growing well-being. With that in mind, let's move forward to the content. So my undergraduate degree is in English. I loved reading Ralph Waldo Emerson back in the day. And he's got this quote that I really, really like that I think is relevant for us all in this time. Look at this. Emerson says, "The wise man in the storm prays to God not for safety from danger, but for deliverance from fear." It's the storm within that endangers him, not the storm without. That's what we're talking about now. And so then you ask yourself, what's the storm within me? Well, it's all these things we're going to talk about, like our financial well-being, our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being, occupational well-being. All of that is inside of me. It's a storm inside of me. And I may not be able to control what's going on around me: political turmoil, racial turmoil, financial discord, what version or variant of COVID's going to pop. I can't control those things. If I'm wise, Emerson argued, let me go in and calm the storm within me. So again, this material is about calming the storm within you. This is our life. This is holistic self-care. It's so much more comprehensive than having a piece of chocolate. So each spoke represents a major area: financial, spiritual, physical, occupational, and emotional. When I'm taking care of myself, when I'm practicing holistic self-care, that's what my wheel looks like. That's me being a good steward of my emotions, my finances, my spirit, my body, and my occupation. That's the goal. So I think of that as like my January 1st wheel, meaning, let's say I've got some vacation time over the holiday. I've spent the holiday taking care of myself and I'm good, or at least better anywhere. So January 2nd rolls around, I'm back at work and hey, I'm good. I call this my January 15th wheel, meaning I'm 15 days into the new year and I'm already worn out. So I think that the whole point here is realizing that wellness, holistic self-care, and these things I'm going to show you, it's a process. It's not a destination, meaning it's like taking care of your car. You don't buy a car, put gas in it one time and say, yeah, I fueled it up back in 1997. We're good. You always got to keep filling it up. You don't hopefully change the oil and say, yeah, I changed the oil 6 years ago. We're good, right? No, you come back every 3,000 miles or whatever it is. We've got to always go back for maintenance on our car. And that's the way we need to think of our bodies and our lives. It's like this wheel. And my job is to keep coming back to it and working different areas of it. And sometimes my wheel looks really good and sometimes it gets depleted. And then that's just my check engine light. So then I grow my well-being and it's like a heartbeat. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. I'm filled up, I get poured out. I'm filled up and I get poured out, filled up, poured out. The struggle or the challenge that most of us face is we get filled up, or maybe we weren't filled, but we get squeezed out. So number one, we're tired and we're ashamed of it. And we like, man, I don't want to tell anybody I'm not doing well because I'm supposed to be on top of the game and people are looking at me to be the one in control. And so we don't want to admit it because there's shame. And then we live in a culture and a society where this is less true now than it's ever been, but still there's stigma. You know, I don't want to admit that I'm not doing well. I will say that one advantage of the pandemic is that it's more okay not to be okay than it's ever been, which I think is good in some ways. You know, our wheel gets shriveled down, or maybe we say like, I don't care who knows about it. I'm not doing well, but we don't know what self-care looks like. How do you actually grow your wheel back out? So there's stigma that keeps us depleted. There's a lack of knowledge about how to grow well-being that keeps us depleted. And then there's another one, man, I think this last one is probably the biggest lie, and I'm going to use that word lie deliberately, that keeps us locked into lack of well-being. And it's this: I don't have time for self-care. I understand you're busy. And so the strategies I'm going to give you today, man, they're practical, actionable strategies that you can incorporate into your daily life, into your weekly life, so that each day there's a micro practice that you can put into place. Each weekend, there are micro practices that you can put into place. Each holiday, there are micro practices that you can put into place. This is how you get your wheel to come back out. You're filled up, poured out, filled up, poured out. It's like a heartbeat. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Okay, that's the big picture around self-care. If you had to guess, which one is your strength right now? Where do you feel like you're doing the best? Is it financial? Is it spiritual? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through what does it mean to be well in each of these areas. So financial well-being. So does that mean I need to be like Bill Gates rich? I hope not, because if so, most of us aren't going to make it. Physical well-being, does that mean I need to be able to run a marathon? I hope not. There was one this past weekend, most of us aren't going to be able to get it. But what I'm going to do is define well-being in each of these areas so that you'll realize well-being really is attainable for all of us. And then I'm going to give you practical strategies. Let's jump right in. What is occupational well-being? 2 keys. Number 1, you want to have good community. So then the question is, what is professional community? I think back to the 90s, there was a sitcom called Cheers, and it was like, sometimes you want to know where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came. I would hope to God that wherever I showed up for work, number 1, they knew my name, but more importantly, they were glad that I came. Just being bonded with people at work. It's not that they have to be your comadre, that you have to have these deep, lifelong friendships. Maybe you do, but just something beneath the superficial connection is really, really helpful at work. Just so you can share your joys, your frustrations, your challenges, your hopes. So doing it in isolation is what you don't want to do, but having good community is what you do want to do. And you can't have good community with everybody you work with, but man, I would pick 1 or 2 people that I just felt a kindred spirit with and say, man, let's walk this thing together, And then number 2 is set boundaries. And what that means, setting boundaries, every day at some point when you go home, you got to be able to shut it down and say, I am unemployed until 8:00 tomorrow morning, period. I am not an employee between now and then tomorrow morning when I show up to my parking lot. And then you do everything else. And then you take this huge risk and see if the sun comes up tomorrow. So I've been doing that for a while now, and I've yet to break the universe. So if I want to be well occupationally, those are 2 key things I need to be thinking about. Number 1, do I have connection at work where I can share my ups and my downs? And then number 2, have I set boundaries, not just each day? What about the weekend? What's my sacred time that no matter what, I'm not going to do work stuff? What about the holidays? What does that need to look like? So that's occupational well-being. Emotional well-being, experience and express all your emotions. Okay, there's a lot there. Experience and express emotion. Let me put it this way. Toxic positivity is when somebody says, you need to turn your frown upside down. Do you know how many starving people in Africa would love your job? You should be happy. Whatever you feel, you get to feel it. Anything. If you want to feel happy, you get to feel happy. If you want to feel sad and overwhelmed, you get to feel that. So you get to experience all of your emotions. You really do. Toxic negativity is the opposite. It's saying you shouldn't feel happy. This place sucks. You're just naive and you just don't deal with what I deal with. That's toxic negativity. So we don't want to be toxically positive or toxically negative. We just want to be ourselves and do our emotion. That's experiencing the emotion. The other thing is expressing it. Yes, you have freedom to be angry. You don't have freedom to be a life sucker with that anger. You don't just get to come in and say, how are you doing today, Adam? I'm angry. And I get to be angry because that guy, Adam, that psychologist, he said I get to feel my emotions. Great. Well, why are you angry? Because I have to work with you idiots. What do you think? Maybe, but that's not an appropriate way to express the anger. So I need to remember that, yes, I get to experience all my emotions, and that's my freedom. My responsibility is managing those emotions like an adult. And to quote the great Fred Rogers, I just love that guy, God rest his soul, all feelings are mentionable and all feelings are manageable. That's emotional hygiene 101. So that's the first thing. Next one, practice extending and requesting forgiveness. And what that means is, my favorite definition of forgiveness is this. Forgiveness is surrendering the right I think I have to punish someone for the harm they've caused me. So what that means is, you hurt me, an eye for an eye, right? You get me, I'm going to get you back. Forgiveness is saying, you hurt me, I have the right to get you back, but I'm going to surrender it and let it go. That's very, very hard to do. But it's so important because as long as I'm walking in unforgiveness, I'm in guarded mode, I'm in retaliation mode, and so many other people are going to have to pay rent on what the offender did. Forgiveness is so, so important. I'll just give you a quick example. Let's say 10 years ago, you were working with somebody who was Mexican-American, who had a lot of tattoos and a lot of education. And let's say his name was Mario, right? And let's say Mario did you wrong, somehow threw you under the bus, man, at work, made you look really, really bad, almost cost you your job, in fact. Mario left, man. He went to some other planet somewhere. So you can't resolve it with him, but you're still angry at Mario, that guy, man, that clown, I'm going to get him. Okay, so fast forward. All of a sudden, I'm working with you now. My name's Adam, but I'm not Mario. I'm Adam, but I'm Mexican-American. I got a lot of tattoos and I got a lot of education. If you're still walking in unforgiveness towards Mario and you're still holding a grudge, guess which tattooed Mexican gets to pay rent on what Mario did? It's me. And I'm not even the person, like, I'm not responsible. That's why forgiveness is so important, because when we forgive, what we're saying is nobody has to pay rent on what somebody else did. I'm giving everybody in my life a fresh chance. And then forgiveness, remember, forgiveness is not, I'm going to be a doormat. I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to protect myself appropriately, but I'm not going to walk around in vengeance either. So if I want to be well emotionally, those are two keys right there. Experience my emotions, practice extending and requesting forgiveness. Next one. What is financial well-being? Number one, this one's easy. Identify external factors that impact your relationship with money. What's that external factor? It's a budget. Do you have a budget? That's it. That's the main external factor. Do you have a budget? And if you don't have one, go to Google, type in Excel budget, and you'll find great samples of free Excel spreadsheets you can use. It's real simple. It's third grade math. You add up all of the numbers that you spend every month and you get a number. And the goal is for that number to be smaller than the number on your paycheck. Third grade math. You add, is this less than this? This needs to be bigger than this. Paycheck needs to be bigger than what I spend every month. Okay. So smaller number, bigger number, third grade math. That's the main external factor. The hard one, in my opinion, is the internal factor that impacts your relationship with money, your psychology of money. So what I mean by that is, if you've got a budget and your budget is not working, it's probably not a math problem. Your budget's probably not working for other reasons. It's not that you can't add and do third grade math. You probably can. It's the internal factors. It's your psychology of money. And it's really weird, but in the same way, in some frighteningly similar ways that I have a relationship with the woman that I've been married to for 28 years, I have a relationship with money. And so do you. And in the same way that, at least initially, how I interacted with my wife was determined by what was modeled for me in my childhood, the way that I interact with money was also largely shaped by what I saw modeled for me in my childhood. So what did you learn about money growing up? I grew up poor, and the message I got is money is evil, so stay away from it. People that have money are evil. It's not true. Money's just a tool. It's not good or bad. It's just a tool. Did you grow up learning to use money and spending to medicate your emotions? Did you learn that unless you wear certain clothes, you're not valuable? Unless you live in certain neighborhoods, you're not valuable? That's the internal psychology that keeps a budget from working. So when budgets don't work, again, it's not usually a math problem. It's usually a relationship problem, the problem of your relationship with money. Okay. So there you go. That's financial well-being. And notice there's nothing in here about being a millionaire. There's nothing in here about retiring when you're 30. There are millionaires that are not well financially because they're not living within their means. That's what financial well-being is. It's like, what's my piece of the pie, and am I living within it? And if I'm not living within it, why not? Spiritual well-being. So let me say this about spiritual well-being. As I said before, I'm a psychologist. I'm also an ordained minister. And when I talk about spiritual well-being, I'm not really necessarily talking about religion. People who are agnostic or atheist can still have a very deep sense of spirituality about their life. So spiritual well-being at its core is, who am I and why am I on this planet? That's like, talk about bedrock questions in life. That's the starting point. That may involve the presence of a transcendent being. So you may say, well, I'm a child of God, and my purpose on life is to glorify God. Maybe you're Zen Buddhist and you say, well, I'm a human being, and my purpose on life is to find enlightenment and release from the trappings of the world. Great. Maybe you're atheist. You don't believe in a higher power, and you say, I'm a human being and I've got 80 years ish on this planet. And my purpose here is to do as much good as I can. Great. Those are all expressions of spirituality. They may or may not involve a God, but they're all expressions of spirituality. So, number one, link your decision making with your life values. And what I mean by that is whatever your jam is, Christianity, Zen Buddhism, agnosticism, atheism, secular humanism, that's your truth finding rubric. Spiritual well-being is going into whatever your truth finding rubric is and saying, who am I? Why am I on this planet? Who should I marry? What should that relationship look like? How should I spend my money? How should I take care of my body? How should I raise my children? What neighborhood should I live in? What should my job be? Letting that value system inform all of those decisions, that's what really brings our worldview and our value system to life to manifest value in the world around us. Okay. So I want to link my decision-making with my life values, whatever it is that I value. Number two, I want to share my life with like-minded individuals, meaning whatever I believe, I want to live my life with people who believe that. So we can talk about what does it mean to be a Christian and add value to the world in that workplace? What does it mean to be a Zen Buddhist or a Hindu and add value to that workplace? What does it mean to be an agnostic or an atheist and add value to that workplace? So I want to spend time with people who believe what I believe so we can talk about it and flesh it out and actually live out what we believe. And I think maybe even more importantly, I want to live my life with people who don't believe what I believe, unlike-minded. And let me be real clear. I don't want to do that so that I can prove why they're wrong and I'm right and change them. That's not the point of that. The point of that is that hopefully when we talk about something as esoteric as spirituality, we do it in a context in which we come to the table with enough humility to admit, I might be the idiot in the room thinking that there's a God. I might be the idiot in the room thinking there's no God. And I have to ask myself, do I want to be right or do I want to be learning? And I want to be learning. So I want to visit with people who don't believe what I believe, not so that I can convince them or shame them or win them over to my team, but so that I can learn from them. You know, I believe in a higher power, broadly speaking. I don't really identify with any world religion per se, but I am a theist and a deist. But I love hearing from people who are atheists, who believe there's no higher power, because I want to learn. I want them to push into every bit of my thinking so that I can make sure that I'm doing my homework, not so that I can change them. Okay, so that's spiritual well-being. Last one, physical well-being. 3 keys. Number 1, practice good nutrition. Number 2, get 20 minutes of exercise a day. And number 3, sleep well. One thing I'll say about physical well-being is, so people say, Adam, don't talk to me about self-care. I'm too busy for self-care. I'm too busy to practice self-care. Okay. So I'm just going to give you one example of why I don't believe that. Are you too busy to eat? Some people say, well, yeah, sometimes I have to skip lunch. Okay, I get it. But at some point, every day, you're going to eat something, right? I mean, you got to eat. Most people don't skip a day without eating. So if you're going to have to eat anyway, are you going to have a cheeseburger with French fries? Or are you going to have lean protein and vegetables? Why not make healthy choices? You know, another example of that is, are you too busy to drive to work? Nope. If you drive to work, well, what if you practice breath work in the car while you're driving and just regulating yourself? So you're going to have to drive anyway. Why not repurpose that time for some physical well-being through breath work? So this is what I mean when I say one of the biggest disservices we do ourselves is when we start spouting, I'm too busy, I'm too busy. Another thing on food, people say, oh yeah, man, I love my cheeseburgers and French fries. I don't like vegetables. I never have liked them. The thing with my body being well, nutrition, exercise, and sleep, 80% of my body being well, 80% of it, it's not exercise, it's nutrition. 20% is exercise, 80% is nutrition. People say, I don't have time for self-care. Yeah, you do, because you have to eat anyway. So why not do 80% of your physical well-being by eating the good food? So What makes my body healthy, 80% of it is what I put in my mouth. What I put in my mouth is largely determined by what comes out of my mouth. Let me tell you what I mean by that. In the same way that if I keep coming back to, I'm too busy to practice self-care, I'm going to keep believing that lie and putting it off, thinking that there's some population of the working force somewhere, and they've got, unlike me, they've got a discretionary 20 hours of their work week where they can go do that, but not me. I'm too busy. That's why that belief is so limiting, right? So then with nutrition, you say, well, I tried to replace my cheeseburger and fries and milkshake with lean proteins and vegetables, but what comes out of your mouth? Oh, I never have liked vegetables. Oh, I don't like protein. Oh, I got to have my cheeseburger. When you keep confessing those things about why you don't have time and about why you hate vegetables, you're enabling yourself. This is the stuff that therapy is made of. It's about examining those beliefs that are just not serving you, that keep you locked into poor performance. All right. So that's physical well-being, and then sleep well. Now, here's the million-dollar question. How well are we? Well, I love the quote by Edward Demings. He was an American economist back in the 60s. He said, "In God I trust, all others must show data." Okay, here's the data. I don't trust you. I want you to show me data. So this is the wellness inventory. So you'll see down here the tabs: occupational, emotional, financial, spiritual, physical. And then the last one is the wheel. So what I do, let's do occupational. Let's go back to occupational. Question number 1, at work, I can let go of frustrating situations over which I know I have no control. It's binary, true or false. So let's say that's a false. I'm going to put a 0. Number 2, I'm confident in my knowledge of my professional field. I'm going to say, yeah, I got a PhD, man. I'm confident. I'm generally satisfied with my vocation. I am, man. I love what I do. I'm satisfied with the relational environment. Let's say, well, not really. 0. I commit time and energy to professional. You're doing that right now. 1, I access resources like books, professionals to improve my, yep, you're doing that right now. You read 3 books related to your field per year. Let's say no. Happy with work-life balance. Let's say no. You adapt to change at work without blaming, you know what, let's say no. Okay. And then your time at work is, let's say no, it's not characterized by positive thought. 0. So you scored 4. Okay. Then you go to emotional, next tab, and you do the same thing, right? These are the 10 questions, true or false. You get a score. Then you do financial, then you do spiritual, then you do physical, and then it automatically shows you what your wheel looks like. So that's really how you get a sense of what your well-being really looks like. And so, you know, we think of well-being like, how well are you? And what you hear in that, how well are you, is how do you feel today? That's a real subjective, like, well, I feel good. I'm going to Casa de Brazil tonight. I'd feel good about that, right? But that's not really a good measure of really how well am I. How do you feel today? I feel good. Coming up on a holiday, well, that's great. But how I feel in the moment based on that one time event is not a good measure. So this tells me what my wheel really looks like, number 1. And number 2, it's so helpful because at the end of the day, when I do get home and I shut things down at 7 p.m. or on the weekend, that wheel tells me this is where you need to be focusing your energy. If you want to sit in front of Netflix and do a 2-hour binge, that's great. But keep in mind, you're not well physically, so you might want to start thinking about what nutritional changes you need to make. You know, you might want to think that you're not doing well financially. What adjustments do you want to make? Where are you getting in trouble? And what is your underlying psychology that keeps you getting back on Amazon, click, 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 when you know it's like, it's not in the budget. That's how that wheel can inform how you can most wisely steward your downtime. Because if we're not thinking like systemically, the systems of my life, when we get to holiday or the end of the day, it's like, I just don't want to do work. Okay, that's a great start, but what will you do to fill the time? That's how this can be helpful. You know what well-being is now because I've defined it, and you see that it can be attainable for everybody. You've got a little assessment now just to give you kind of a sense of how well you actually are. Not how well do you feel, but how well are you actually. And that wheel can inform how you invest your time moving forward. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to real quickly walk through some practical recommendations, things that you can start doing right now to improve well-being in each of the areas. Well, let's say your weak area is occupational. Reach out to a colleague that's struggling and listen. So remember, having community at work is important. Just listening to a colleague is a great strategy to build community. And you don't have to fix anything. You don't have to solve anything. If you go to work, like you know who you work with day in, day out, and you know what their normal is, and your spidey sense starts to tingle and you're like, they just don't seem like themselves. Trust that intuition and just go to them and say, hey man, just real quick, you doing okay? You just seem a little off and I just want you to know I care about you and you want to talk, let me know. Like if somebody came to me and checked in on me like that, I would be surprised, number one. But when I walked away, I would think, that was really sweet of them. I appreciate that. That goes a long way. Or maybe if I knew them better, I would say, I'm just, thanks for checking in. I just got some bad news with my family or whatever. Great, man. Let's grab coffee. We'll talk about it. We'll hang out, whatever. Just being a good empathetic listener, asking good questions. Really, what were you thinking? How are you feeling? Oh, what are you going to do? Oh my gosh, really? Well, then what happened? Just that kind of reflective listening, asking questions goes a long way. Next one, keep your relationships at work, anywhere, certainly, but certainly at work, clean. And what I mean by that is like, man, listen, we're going to make each other mad at work. We're going to frustrate each other. We're going to let each other down. When that happens, let's just try to be adults about how we resolve conflict. There's no need to take to Facebook with this stuff, right? There's no need to go around people's back and backstab and slander. And one of the most naive thoughts I had as a 19-year-old young man working as a dishwasher at a fast food restaurant was, I can't wait till I go out into the real world and get a real job and work with real adults because then I can leave all this drama behind me. I really thought that, like, I don't know, once you turn 30, you wake up and you can finally resolve conflict. So it doesn't happen. So if you've got conflict with a colleague, just resolve it like an adult. Go to them and have a conflict resolution session. Make an I statement. And that is, instead of saying, hey, look, we need to talk. You know what your problem is? Like, that's how not to start the conflict, the resolution. The way to start is like, can we talk? Yeah. Hey, listen, I just need you to know I feel blank about blank because blank, please blank. That's how you start that conversation. If somebody offends you, hey, I just want you to know, let's talk real quick. I just want you to know, I feel angry about what you said in the staff meeting because I worked really hard on that project and it was insulting of you to say those things. Please don't disparage my work in front of my colleagues again. Great. That's very, very clean. That's a great way to resolve it. Versus, oh, I'm not going to say anything. Oh, I don't like awkward conversation. Oh, I don't want to make them mad. Keep up with that and see how far you get. It's not going to be very far productive. I'll tell you that. Look at that last one. Discuss your evening routine with your family. Ask for their help setting boundaries. Whoever you go home to, just talk about it. Create a social contract and say, look, we're going to agree that at this hour each night, we're done. So my wife and I are empty nesters. It's just our 4 kids have gone. And we check in with each other. We ask each other for permission to do work at home because we don't want to take the other person for granted. Okay. So whoever you go home to, talk about what a social contract might look like. Emotional well-being, identify and diffuse your triggers. What triggers you? Is it people who waste your time? Is it people who say things, who vote for a certain political party, who have certain sexual orientations, who are of a certain age, of a certain gender? Whatever those triggers are, you can have them. Like you be triggered all you want, but man, keep it under control. Like one thing that triggers me is people wasting my time. I get really emotional, but I can't go off on somebody just because they waste my time. I got to defuse and own that trigger. That's my work that I need to do. So whatever your triggers are, identify them and defuse them, and then forgive. If you've been hurt by somebody at work or somebody in your personal life, forgive them so that you can move forward and heal. Financial, if you're struggling financial, just find accountability. And what that means is just find somebody that you can talk to and just say, look, man, it's kind of weird because we're trained not to talk about politics or religion or parenting or money. But you got to find somebody to say, look, man, I've been struggling financially. I've got this budget. It doesn't work out. Can you help me with this? And they don't need to be a certified financial planner. Just find somebody that you respect that seems to manage their money well and ask for help. But if you don't have accountability, then it's not going to happen. If you keep it a secret, it's never going to get better. Spiritual well-being. Write yourself a letter reminding yourself why you chose to enter education, or whatever you do. Why are you doing it? Not what, not where, not when, not how, but why? What hopes do you have for spending your life in this vocation? What do you want to come of that? And then keep a calling journal. And what that is, the calling journal, I was just talking to a colleague of mine about that. It's just whenever you have those moments where you're like, man, this is why I do what I do, whether it is maybe a student comes and says, hey, man, I just want you to know you were a difference maker for me. You were a game changer for me. And I just want you to know I wanted to drop out, but you've helped me stay put. Document that, write that down and put it in a box, put it in a file somewhere, because even when we love what we do, I love what I do as a psychologist, but I still have moments where it's like, it's just a job. I don't feel any joy in it. I don't feel any passion for it. And when I get to those moments and those seasons, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, I got to go back to that journal, the calling journal, my box, my why box, and read those letters. When people, sometimes they come to my workshops and they say, Adam, man, you talked about this in a way I've never heard it before. That was so helpful. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. First thing I do before I even reply to them is I print the email and then I store it, because I need to reflect back on all of those moments as reminders. Those are my anchor points. Okay. So keep a journal of why you doing what you're doing. Physical well-being, consult with a nutritionist to create a daily nutrition plan, find a workout partner, find somebody to walk with, to do yoga with, hot yoga at the Yoga Pod Sunday morning. That's a great thing. Practice effective sleep hygiene. If you don't know what sleep hygiene is, Google it. It just refers to the rhythm that you have every night. What time do you take a shower? What time do you put your pajamas on? What time do you get into bed? Are you taking media into bed with you? What time do you turn your lights out? Are you practicing any breath work to help regulate your body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest, out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system? All of that is called sleep hygiene. And it's just what prepares us to go to sleep. And one thing to remember is that when we sleep, we heal. When we don't sleep, we don't heal. So I think the two most important parts of my body being well, it's not working out. And that's the main thing. Is you think physical well-being, it means I need to exercise. Mostly it means I need to eat right and I need to sleep well. That's really what keeps this thing healthy. Now you have a better idea of what self-care really looks like. Operating a motor vehicle, is so much more expensive than just putting gas in the tank. It's oil changes, it's new tires, it's insurance, it's maintenance, it's upkeep. And same thing is true for my life. Keeping this thing on the road, so to speak, it's more comprehensive than a bubble bath. It's physical, financial, emotional, occupational, and spiritual well-being. And me being a good steward of those areas of my life and coming back to them daily. What questions do you have for me? Yes, that's a great question. That's called setting a boundary. So you hurt me, and I say, hey, look, this thing you did, it hurt me. Please don't do that again. And then what if they say, like, whatever, I'm going to keep doing it. You can't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me. Well, it hurt you because you're weak, because you suck, right? And so it's clear that they're invested in their toxicity. They're not going to change. They don't value you enough to change. Maybe they're narcissistic. So the question is it okay to pull back and say, okay, we'll just do life superficially? Absolutely. Absolutely, because it's like, you may not value me enough to change your behavior to treat me appropriately, but I guarantee you I value myself, and I'm not going to let you run all over me like that. So you stay over there and don't ask me about my family, whatever. We'll just keep it superficial. And if you decide you want to connect with me on a deeper level, you will change your behavior to comply with what I'm asking, because what I'm asking is very, very reasonable. So great question. How do I suggest sharing this information with someone you see struggling in a certain area? First thing I would do is ask them if they're interested in help. So the most important thing is that person that you think needs help, that you get their permission to offer it to them. Don't come up to them and say, look, you're struggling here, take this. That's off-putting, What book would you recommend? Oh, hey, hold on. I know this is going to sound grossly self-serving, but somebody asked, so I'm going to say it. I recommend this book here. It's called The Power of a Teacher, by this guy I know named Adam Sines. All of this content is in this book. The assessment is in this book. The inventory is in here. The recommendations that I went through are in the back of the book, including more. I just went to the main ones. Amazon, $14.99. And let me say, you may say, I'm not a teacher. I'm not in a classroom. You are. Everybody's a teacher. Everybody's a teacher. I'm a teacher. You're a teacher. Everybody's a teacher. Anybody that's looking at you, they're learning from you something. Albert Bandura called it social learning theory. All right, man, time's up. Love yourself. Hey, listen, don't just love yourself well. Love yourself extravagantly. Nobody else on the planet may appreciate how incredibly valuable you are, but you can. And so treat yourself accordingly. Treat yourself with the value that you know you have. Awesome. I'm going to go out with that. Thank you so much for being here and appreciate y'all. Keep up the great work.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.